Niccolò Machiavelli wrote The Prince over 500 years ago, yet his insights into human nature and power remain disturbingly accurate today. Most people think Machiavellian means evil or manipulative, but they're missing the point entirely. Machiavelli wasn't teaching you how to be a villain. He was teaching you how to survive and thrive in a world where others play by different rules than the ones you were taught. Today, I'm going to break down the core principles that can change how you navigate every relationship, every workplace, every social situation you'll ever encounter. If you want to understand the real dynamics of power and influence that shape every aspect of your life, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss content that could transform your perspective. The first thing Machiavelli understood that most people don't is that good intentions don't protect you from bad outcomes. You can be the most moral, hardworking, honest person in the room and still get crushed by someone who understands the game better than you do. This isn't cynicism, it's realism. Machiavelli observed that successful leaders weren't necessarily the most virtuous ones. They were the ones who understood that different situations require different approaches. Sometimes you need to be generous, sometimes you need to be firm, sometimes you need to be transparent, sometimes you need to keep your cards close to your chest. The key insight here is adaptability. Rigid people, no matter how good their character, often fail because they can't adjust their strategy to match the reality in front of them. Machiavelli called this the ability to be both the fox and the lion. The lion uses strength and directness when necessary. The fox uses cunning and intelligence to navigate around obstacles that brute force can't overcome. Most people are taught to be one or the other, but the truly successful understand when to deploy each approach. This doesn't mean being fake or manipulative. It means being strategic about how you present yourself and your ideas, depending on what the situation requires. The person who always tells the truth at the worst possible moment isn't noble, they're naive. The person who always uses force when subtlety would work better isn't strong, they're clumsy. Machiavelli's lesson is about reading the room and adapting accordingly, not about abandoning your values, but about being smart in how you pursue them. You can maintain your integrity while still being strategic about when and how you reveal your hand. The people who master this balance are the ones who actually get things done in the real world, while those who insist on rigid approaches often find themselves sidelined, no matter how pure their intentions might be. Here's something Machiavelli observed that makes most people uncomfortable, but it's absolutely true in practice. Being loved is wonderful, but being respected is more reliable. Love is fickle and conditional. Respect, properly cultivated, creates a foundation of influence that doesn't depend on people's moods or changing feelings about you. This doesn't mean you should try to make people fear you or that you should be cruel. It means you should be someone whose boundaries are clear, whose word means something, and who follows through on what they say they'll do. Think about the people in your life who have real influence. It's rarely the ones who try to be everyone's best friend. It's the ones who are consistent, reliable, and who maintain their standards even when it's inconvenient. Machiavelli noticed that leaders who tried too hard to be liked often found themselves taken advantage of. People would make promises they had no intention of keeping. They would test boundaries constantly, and when push came to shove, they would choose their own interests over loyalty to someone they saw as too accommodating. On the other hand, leaders who established clear expectations and consistently enforced them found that people knew where they stood. There's comfort in predictability, even when that predictability includes consequences for certain behaviors. This principle applies whether you're managing a team, raising children, or even in personal relationships. The people who respect your time are usually the ones who know you won't tolerate it being wasted. The people who keep their word to you are often the ones who know you keep your word to them. It's not about being harsh or unreasonable. It's about being clear about what you will and won't accept, and then consistently following through. When people know your boundaries are real, they tend to operate within them. When they think your boundaries are suggestions, they'll push past them constantly. Machiavelli understood that this kind of respect creates a more stable foundation for relationships than trying to make everyone happy, which is usually impossible anyway. You can't control whether people like you, but you can influence whether they respect you, and respect is what actually gets things done. One of Machiavelli's most misunderstood insights is about the nature of promises and commitments. He observed that agreements are only as strong as the power that enforces them, and that naive trust often leads to betrayal. This sounds harsh, but it's not about becoming paranoid or cynical. It's about being realistic about incentives and creating structures that align people's self-interest with keeping their word to you. Smart people don't rely on others being good. They create situations where being good is also in the other person's best interest. This might mean having clear contracts, building in accountability measures, or simply being prepared for the possibility that someone might not follow through. It's not that people are inherently bad, but that when their circumstances change or when pressure builds, their priorities might shift in ways that affect their commitments to you. Machiavelli suggested that the wise person prepares for this possibility rather than being shocked when it happens. This doesn't mean you should never trust anyone or that you should assume the worst about people's intentions. It means you should trust, but verify. Make agreements clear and specific. Build in ways to monitor progress. Have backup plans for important outcomes that depend on others. Create mutual incentives wherever possible so that helping you also helps them. When you do this properly, you'll find that people are much more likely to keep their commitments because you've made it easy and beneficial for them to do so. The people who get burned repeatedly in business and personal relationships are often those who made vague agreements, didn't follow up, and hoped that good faith would be enough to ensure good outcomes. Meanwhile, those who create clear expectations and mutual accountability find that most people rise to meet those expectations. It's not about being controlling or mistrustful. It's about being professional and realistic about how to create conditions where everyone can succeed in their commitments to each other. Machiavelli made another observation that's crucial for anyone who wants to build lasting influence, which is that perception often matters more than reality, especially in the short term. This isn't about being fake or deceptive. It's about understanding that people make decisions based on the information they have and the impressions they form, not necessarily on complete knowledge of who you are or what you're capable of. Your reputation precedes you into every room you enter. The stories people tell about you influence how they interpret your actions and your words. If you have a reputation for being reliable, people will give you the benefit of the doubt when something goes wrong. If you have a reputation for being unreliable, people will be skeptical even when you do everything right. This is why managing your image isn't vanity, it's strategy. It's why being consistent in your public behavior matters. It's why small actions can have disproportionate impacts on how you're perceived. Machiavelli noted that successful leaders pay attention to the symbols and signals they send, not just the substance of their decisions. They understand that communication isn't just about the words they use, but about the context in which those words are received. This means thinking about timing when you have difficult conversations. It means considering how your decisions will be interpreted by different audiences. It means being deliberate about the stories that get told about you by controlling, as much as possible, the narrative around your actions. This isn't manipulation, it's communication strategy. The person who does great work but never talks about it might be passed over for promotions. The person who delivers bad news without context might be seen as negative even when they're trying to help. The person who makes good decisions but doesn't explain their reasoning might be seen as arbitrary or impulsive. Managing perception means taking responsibility for how you communicate, not just what you communicate. It means understanding that your intentions don't automatically translate into other people's understanding. It means being proactive about shaping the narrative around your actions rather than assuming that good work speaks for itself. Perhaps Machiavelli's most practical insight for modern life is about the strategic value of timing. He observed that the same action can have completely different outcomes depending on when it's taken. Knowing when to speak up and when to stay quiet, when to push forward and when to wait, when to reveal information and when to hold it back. These decisions often determine success or failure more than the quality of your ideas or the strength of your character. Most people focus entirely on what they want to say or do, but successful people also focus intensely on when to say it or do it. Think about negotiations you've been in. The person who makes their best offer first usually gets a worse deal than the person who waits to understand what the other side really needs. Think about workplace conflicts. The person who addresses issues immediately in the heat of the moment often gets different results than the person who waits for emotions to cool and approaches the situation strategically. This isn't about being calculating or manipulative. It's about being thoughtful about context and circumstances. The same feedback delivered when someone is stressed and defensive will land differently than when they're calm and receptive. The same proposal presented when budgets are tight will get a different response than when resources are available. The same idea pitched when leadership is focused on other priorities will be received differently than when it aligns with their current concerns. Machiavelli understood that external circumstances create windows of opportunity that open and close regardless of your internal readiness. Sometimes the perfect plan executed at the wrong time fails, while an imperfect plan executed at the right moment succeeds. This means paying attention to what's happening around you, not just what's happening inside your own head. It means developing sensitivity to other people's moods, pressures, and priorities. It means being patient when the timing isn't right, and being ready to move quickly when it is. The people who master this skill find that their ideas get heard, their suggestions get implemented, and their influence grows, not because they're necessarily smarter than everyone else, but because they understand the rhythm of when people are ready to listen and when they're not. Another crucial insight from Machiavelli is about the power of information and strategic communication. He understood that knowledge is power, but more specifically, that controlling the flow of information gives you significant leverage in any situation. This doesn't mean being secretive or deceptive, but rather being thoughtful about what you share, when you share it, and with whom. The people who succeed in complex organizations or relationships are often those who understand that information has strategic value. They listen more than they speak. They ask questions that reveal what others are thinking, and they're careful about giving away their position too early in negotiations or conflicts. Think about how this plays out in your daily life. The person who immediately reveals their budget in a negotiation usually pays more than necessary. The employee who shares every detail of their job search with their current boss might find themselves pushed out before they're ready to leave. The friend who gossips freely about others will eventually have others gossiping about them. Machiavelli observed that information flows differently at different levels of any hierarchy or social structure. The people at the top often have incomplete pictures because subordinates tell them what they think they want to hear. The people at the bottom often lack context for decisions that affect them. The people in the middle often have the most complete view, but the least formal power to act on what they know. Understanding these dynamics helps you position yourself strategically. It helps you know who to ask when you need accurate information, who to approach when you want to influence a decision, and how to frame your ideas so they get heard by the right people at the right time. This isn't about manipulation, it's about communication strategy. It's about understanding that different people have different concerns, different priorities, and different ways of processing information. The successful person learns to speak the language that resonates with their audience, not just the language that feels natural to them. They understand that the same idea might need to be presented as a cost-saving measure to a financial person, as an efficiency improvement to an operations person, and as a competitive advantage to a salesperson. The key is understanding what drives each person and framing your communication accordingly. This skill becomes even more important as you advance in your career or take on leadership roles, because your ability to influence outcomes increasingly depends on your ability to communicate effectively with diverse stakeholders who all have different interests and perspectives. Machiavelli also understood something that modern psychology has confirmed, which is that people are much more motivated by loss aversion than by potential gains. He observed that people will work harder to avoid losing something they have than to gain something they don't have, even when the objective value is the same. This insight can transform how you approach motivation, negotiation, and persuasion in every area of your life. When you're trying to motivate someone to take action, framing the conversation around what they might lose by not acting is often more effective than talking about what they might gain by acting. When you're negotiating, understanding what the other person is afraid of losing gives you more leverage than just knowing what they want to gain. When you're trying to create urgency around a decision, highlighting the cost of delay often works better than emphasizing the benefits of moving quickly. This principle shows up constantly in successful marketing and sales. Companies don't just tell you what you'll gain by buying their product, they tell you what you'll miss out on if you don't. Limited time offers, exclusive access, fear of missing out, these all tap into loss aversion. But this insight applies far beyond commercial situations. If you're a manager trying to motivate your team, talking about the market share you might lose to competitors can be more motivating than talking about the market share you might gain. If you're a parent trying to teach your children about consequences, helping them understand what privileges they might lose is often more effective than promising rewards they might earn. If you're trying to convince someone to make a healthy lifestyle change, discussing what they might lose by continuing their current habits often resonates more than describing what they might gain by changing. The key is to understand what people value and then help them see how that value might be at risk. This isn't about creating fear or anxiety. It's about helping people understand the real costs of inaction or poor decisions. When people can clearly see what they stand to lose, they become much more motivated to take action to protect it. This insight also helps you understand your own decision-making patterns. When you're procrastinating or avoiding a difficult decision, ask yourself what you might lose by continuing to delay. Often framing the situation in terms of potential losses rather than potential gains will give you the motivation you need to move forward. Understanding loss aversion helps you become more persuasive, more motivating to others, and more effective at motivating yourself. The importance of maintaining optionality represents one of Machiavelli's most practical insights for modern life. He observed that the most dangerous position is to be completely dependent on any single relationship, opportunity, or resource. The people who thrive long-term are those who always have alternatives, who build multiple sources of income, who cultivate diverse networks, who develop transferable skills that work in different contexts. This isn't about being disloyal or uncommitted. It's about being realistic that circumstances change, that people's priorities shift, that industries evolve, and that the best way to serve others well is to be strong and independent enough that you're choosing to be there, not trapped into being there. When you have options, you can afford to be principled. When you don't have options, you're vulnerable to being taken advantage of or forced into compromises that violate your values. Machiavelli saw that power comes from having the freedom to walk away, because it means you can engage with others from a position of strength rather than desperation. This applies to career decisions, where having marketable skills and a strong professional network means you can choose opportunities based on fit and growth potential rather than just taking whatever's available. It applies to personal relationships, where maintaining your own interests and friendships means you can be a better partner because you're not completely dependent on one person for all your emotional needs. It applies to financial decisions, where having multiple income streams and savings means you can take calculated risks and make long-term investments rather than just surviving paycheck to paycheck. Building optionality requires thinking ahead, investing in yourself continuously, and sometimes saying no to good opportunities so that you're available for great ones. It means not putting all your eggs in one basket, even when that basket seems very secure. It means building redundancy into the systems that support your life, so that if one thing fails, you have other resources to draw on. The people who do this well find that they're less stressed, more confident, and more generous in their dealings with others because they're operating from abundance rather than scarcity. They can afford to be patient, to be selective, and to maintain their standards because they're not desperate for any particular outcome. This kind of strategic independence is what allows you to be truly helpful to others, because you're engaging with them from choice rather than need, which creates much healthier and more sustainable relationships in every area of your life. Perhaps the most sophisticated insight Machiavelli offers is about the art of strategic patience and knowing when to act versus when to wait. He observed that many people fail not because they lack good ideas or strong character, but because they move too quickly when they should wait, or wait too long when they should act. The ability to read the broader context and understand the natural rhythm of change is what separates those who consistently succeed from those who succeed occasionally by luck. This skill requires developing what Machiavelli called political sense, the ability to feel the underlying currents in any situation and position yourself accordingly. Sometimes the best strategy is to let others make the first move so you can respond with full knowledge of their position. Sometimes you need to act quickly before others have time to organize opposition to your plans. Sometimes you need to plant seeds of ideas and let them grow naturally in other people's minds rather than trying to force immediate acceptance. The key is developing sensitivity to the forces at play in any given situation and matching your approach accordingly. This might mean waiting for a leadership change before proposing a major initiative at work. It might mean timing a difficult conversation for when the other person is in a receptive mood. It might mean holding back on sharing an opinion until you understand how it will be received. Strategic patience isn't about being passive or indecisive. It's about being thoughtful about when your actions will have the greatest impact. It requires confidence in your own judgment and the discipline to resist pressure to act before the timing is right. This skill becomes especially important as the stakes get higher in your career and personal life. The decisions that define your trajectory are often the ones where timing matters most. Knowing when to take risks, when to play it safe, when to push harder, and when to pull back. These judgment calls often determine long-term success more than raw talent or effort. Developing this kind of strategic thinking requires paying attention to patterns, learning from both your successes and failures, and constantly refining your ability to read situations accurately. It means being honest about what you can and cannot control, and focusing your energy on the factors that are actually within your influence. The people who master this approach find that they achieve their goals with less stress and conflict because they're working with the natural flow of events rather than constantly fighting against unfavorable circumstances. The final and perhaps most important lesson from Machiavelli is about understanding the difference between what people say they value and what they actually respond to in practice. He observed that there's often a gap between public rhetoric and private behavior, between stated principles and actual decision-making criteria. This isn't necessarily hypocrisy, it's human nature. People genuinely want to believe in high ideals, but they also have practical needs, emotional drivers, and unconscious biases that influence their choices. The successful person learns to pay attention to both levels, to honor people's stated values while also understanding their underlying motivations. This insight transforms how you approach everything from job interviews to personal relationships. In a job interview, the company might say they want someone who's a team player, but what they really need might be someone who can make tough decisions quickly. They might say they value innovation, but what they really want might be someone who can execute existing plans more efficiently. Your job is to listen for both the official requirements and the underlying needs, and then demonstrate how you can address both. In personal relationships, someone might say they want more communication, but what they really need might be more consistent attention or appreciation. They might say they want you to be more spontaneous, but what they really crave might be more predictability and security. Understanding this dual layer of human motivation helps you be more effective in all your interactions. It helps you give people what they actually need, rather than just what they say they want, which usually leads to better outcomes for everyone involved. This doesn't mean ignoring what people say or being manipulative about their stated preferences. It means being sophisticated enough to understand that human motivation is complex and that people don't always have perfect self-awareness about what drives their decisions. The most successful people are those who can operate effectively at both levels, who can speak to people's ideals while also addressing their practical and emotional needs. They understand that sustainable influence comes from helping others achieve their goals, both the ones they talk about publicly and the ones they might not even fully acknowledge to themselves. This insight helps you become more empathetic, more effective, and more successful in building lasting relationships that benefit everyone involved.